Jim McGarvey is the chairman of Backcountry Horsemen of America, and Equestrian Legacy Radio is just very pleased to form a partnership with BCHA back in September, and each first Thursday of the month, they join us to give us an update on what's going on with our trails and any legislation and things that we as trail riders and horse people need to be aware of. And Jim, I hope you've been enjoying the last few minutes of that show. I appreciate you hanging on the line.
Oh yeah, I love listening to RW's music. It's really great. It was a pleasure listening on. Thank you. Been waiting.
Well, we're just really happy to have you join us today, and there is a lot for us to talk about. And I think I'd like to start out talking about the new look that BCHA has, because you've changed the website and you've done a lot of things, and share a little bit with us about that.
Well, yeah, we have. We've had a lot on the table in the past year, and it I think all came together this past week as we rolled out all our new initiatives at our national board meeting in Chattanooga, which was the first time we've ever had a national board meeting east of the Mississippi. And rarely do we have one east of the Rocky Mountains, and so it was great to be here. And folks got a little bit of the southern flavor, and a number of our national directors got to ride at the Chickamauga National Battlefield Park, and they left. These are folks that ride, Grand Teton and Glacier and all up places out west, and a lot of them thought a ride at Chickamauga National Battlefield ought to be on everybody's bucket list. So it was great kickoff there. But the things we've been working on have been a lot of them. We're a conservative group, I think, as most horse people are, especially the trail riding portion of us. We tend to be conservative in our outlook, and so not a lot has changed, in our organizational structure over the past 40 years. But the issues that we face and the people that we work with in the outdoors and on the trails, the hikers and the mountain bikers and all the other users, things move fast, rapidly. Communication is rapid now, and so I think all of our members agree we could kind of do a bit of a makeover in places and some upgrading, and so we've done a lot of places, and we had a lot of help from our volunteer folks in our group and throughout the country. But one of them won't go down necessarily any order, but one of them was we live streamed our national board meeting, and you can see almost all of our things, all of our new initiatives are on backcountryhorse.com. It's backcountryhorse.com. But we did a live streaming of our national board meeting in Chattanooga, and a lot of folks don't, at any type of a national organization, don't understand exactly what goes on at these national meetings, and so I thought it was a good opportunity to share with everybody that we're a serious crowd. We consider everything very seriously, and we had a Public Lands Day on last Thursday, in which we had folks from the Forest Service, the Wilderness Society, the National Park Service speak, and a question and answer session that that everybody can now look at the live streaming because it's stored on the system, and see how it goes on, plus our discussions of the topics and the business of running a national organization and what it takes. So that live streaming went pretty well. A few glitches, but we had our young women volunteers, and Amy McBride and Heather Fillingham and Nellie Lucas did quite well, ran the cameras and double cameras with the screen and that. And so that went well. And then another one we had was our new website, which is a quicker look, a faster look, cleaner look. Also, we have to be cognizant, though, when doing this, that often people don't think about, that when you live, as a lot of our members do, in out west and remote places, your bandwidth isn't as great as maybe city folks that are used to. And so we had to construct it, a clean look, but and a modern look, but yet with a lot of information, but still downloadability. And I think we've accomplished that. Well,
it's a lot more user friendly than your old website was, and I would encourage folks to visit the website backcountryhorse.com. But it's a great-looking site, and again, so much more user-friendly than the other site was. And you can even get a look at Jim there, because there's a chairman's section on there with.
Well, I had no input on some of those placements there. Yeah, thank you. A lot of folks worked on it, and we're continued to. One thing that you might find is the ease of use. This has always been a problem. If you type in your zip code, it'll GPS you your zip code to nearby chapters and their addresses and contact information. So if you want to join Backcountry at a local chapter level, we've got 176 chapters across the country. We have 3 in Tennessee, 4 in Georgia, just as close by here. And so you type it in, you can go directly to information to join. So really pleased. A lot of work went into that, and good team with this. Another initiative we have was estate giving or estate planning. I think that's, if you've, the colleges and different places, you may get things in the mail now to join into this, and we're putting that together, both as an endowment, which would be something as an ongoing thing, draw income from, but more readily to specifically place in your will, or even while you're still alive, please, funds towards Backcountry Horsemen. You can direct them exactly, specifically where you'd like to see them spent, and so that's not completely done. That's a little, it's involved. One has to do that quite properly, like everything, but moving right along with it. And we've already gotten one gift is heading that way, and another one, so that's getting kicked off. We also did this was a great deal of work and initiative, but we did a video. Our member Robin Schindel in Oregon has a lifelong background in marketing and video and this type of thing, and he had a team in conjunction with the Backcountry Horsemen of Oregon and the University of Oregon Media School. They put together a video. This type of thing, it's hours and hours of video and tens and hundreds of hours of getting ready, but it comes down to 3 minutes and 12 seconds, So
right.
And even I'm on there a little bit, some taken from the Rick Lamb, horse show interview with Rick, and good guy, great guide supporter, and and also our folks out in Oregon, Backcountry Horsemen of Oregon, they packed in for the night before. They had scoped out some places. There was a lot of snow still in the mountains, so they had to be a little selective where they went. The trailhead was called Dry Lake, and it was flooded. But they worked through it really well and gave a nice look to it. And our great spokesman, Casey Huststetter, out there talking about why to contribute and why to care about what the Backcountry Horseman does. And that came out really well. That again is. You can see that, and I'll explain to you how to get to that in a couple minutes.
And I'll just mention here, if you go to equestrianlegacy.net on our homepage, we have that video posted. So all you have to do is go to our homepage and watch the video. So it was a great video. I actually looked at it a couple of different times. I thought you did a great job and putting that together, and you did okay too.
It's I can talk. It does. The more some people get nervous in front of people, but the more people, the less nervous I am. And but if you put a camera there, you have to say, even if the words aren't exact, just try to say an idea. So anyway, I have to commend Casey for his work because he had a lot of words to say, and a lot got cut because we had to get down to 3 minutes. But so I did just okay, but so another initiative we had was a new email system. Without going into it, but it's more formalized, cleaner look on the matches, the website type of email, the database control, rather than just sending out the type of emails that maybe you and I send to each other. So this was more impact and greater control. So that was a good one. We have our new crowdfunding initiative. And I'll go into that for a minute because it sounds new and complex, and in a way it is, and in a way it isn't. But if you put in your mind, let's say, National Public Radio or public television has their spring and fall fundraisers. This is where you give a prize, an incentive gift, thank you for donating. Sort of what we're doing. We've worked with. We're working at a site called Indiegogo.com, and again, you can get through to this from backcountryhorse.com.
Right.
And you, the idea is, let me step back. For 40 years, now going on our 41st year, Backcountry Horsemen organization has been completely 99% funded internally by its membership dues and what have you. And for us to, as I say, run with the big dogs, we need to expand that income and strengthen our structure. And so one way of doing that is I followed what the Continental Divide Trail Coalition did last summer, and that is these crowdfunding sites, and there's about 500, but we're using the second biggest, Indiegogo. The fellows that started Google have one too, and what this does, it's formatted for people to go, click on, donate, pick your gift. You can see our video or any videos on it. People for capitalization of new companies, for selling shares, investors in new ideas. They do these sites. Indiegogo does 501(c)(3)s. And so we followed the Continental Divide's example of last year and brought in our fellow Jonathan Stalls, who's a long-distance hiker. He hiked across Scotland last summer, and he hiked across America a few years ago. 8.5 months, there's a picture of his dog in the Atlantic Ocean, and 8.5 months later, he and his dog are in the Pacific Ocean in San Francisco. He raised $500,000 for micro-lending in third world countries, and so Jonathan teaches this, and so he's a big supporter. He came to Chattanooga, and it's a lot of work. But what we're doing, what has kind of gotten more exciting here, we're trying to raise $50,000 and to help fund our outdoor advocacy work. But a national foundation that's been following us closely has offered a challenge grant of another $25,000 if we hit 50.
Oh, that's great.
So for every dollar you give, we get 50. We get 50 cents more, and so we got off to a great weekend. At Chattanooga, where we kicked it off last Friday night, and we got up near 40% in the first 40 hours. And so now we have to go the other 60 because it slows down after that. But sure invite folks to go and donate some great gifts. Ranging from a key fob to a pack ride in the immigrant wilderness, pack ride in Utah. Some folks, that's at the $5,000 level. That sounds like the PBS.
Right.
But we had one in the Oregon wilderness, and that one's already taken. So we have 2 more. So it's just fun to go look and see our story. You don't have to donate; just go read about us. But so that was good. And I think the last thing that had the biggest impact for us was our new brand, which you're showing here on your site, Gary.
Right.
And, again, that was the fellow Robin Schindel in Idaho that did the video. I think that what that brand shows, brand or logo, it shows the in a moment, even if you're not a horse person, the intricacy of leading a pack string. I mean, you often see pictures of them across an open field or prairie, but that's because you can get a good photo. But often it's going down a trail with trees and tangles and curves and branches. And so that gives a good example, and we're excited about it. It sort of epitomizes our whole new effort that we're trying to rebrand, not what we do, but just a rebranding of our image. So we got more things coming out next year. So
it's a great website. You're listening to Equestrian Legacy Radio, and we're talking with Jim McGarvey, chairman of Backcountry Horsemen of America. And I thought that song was kind of fitting, Jim, and kind of gave us both a chance to take a breath, too. But you were in Montana for a meeting with some of the folks out there for a state meeting, and I think you shared with me that you got to meet with 2 of the original founders, or two of the surviving founders.
Yes, I did. There's a special meeting in Montana. They had their annual state meeting, which they've been really having for 41 years. Backcountry Horsemen was founded in the Flathead Valley, which is near Glacier National Park. Just that whole valley, and the Bob Marshall Wilderness is to the east, and Glacier National Park is to the north. And so it's that kind of country. But my wife Cindy and I were invited to come up. I was a keynote speaker and spoke a couple other times. It was at the Missoula chapter. So the meeting was in Missoula, and it was their 40th anniversary. We have 176 chapters, and Missoula was number 2, and so it's a pretty special group. And so we're up there, and I think if your listeners keep in mind when we talk about these things, that there's 155 national forests, over 400 national parks, and BLM land, which is larger than all of them, controlled at state level. And while these are all, of course, governed out of Washington, they really are governed quite closely by the forest supervisor or the national park superintendent, and they do their own forest plans, their own park plans separately from Washington. And so you have varying degrees of access, of how things are determined. So it varies. National parks will be very close together, and they'll be completely different kind of land plans. Not completely different, but as far as horse people are concerned, it can have great impact. So, so whenever I visit, whenever you visit, the topic comes up: access, and this type of thing. So we got into a topic after the meeting, and with a group of the folks. I brought up the concept whether it's a right or a privilege to ride on public lands, and we got in a great discussion about this. It was people vary differently, and maybe I start and go back where this concept kind of started with me was 2006 or 7 here at the Chattahoochee National Forest in North Georgia. It's about 900,000 acres, and the new forest plan, developed in 2004 and 5, says their own separate plan, decided the recommendation to be implemented was that the horses could only stay on approved trails. They couldn't go cross-country. That is, you couldn't leave the trail. It was a $1,000 fine, which, of course, wouldn't be implemented, but no leaving the trails. This policy was implemented at the Talladega National Forest in Alabama, which is still in place, and at the Shawnee in Illinois. So we started, I was president of the North Georgia chapter at that time, which is sort of in the middle of the National Forest area, up there in Blue Ridge area. And I would come from the viewpoint that it's a right to ride in the National Forest, but I hadn't quite put it that way. But I was rallying the folks to send, cards and letters to your congressman, to send me, we were going to start a legal fund. We started a legal fund to sue, the National, the Forest Service, et cetera. So I got a lot of emails, 100 a day, and back then, and it was half of them were against me or upset with me for upsetting Forest Service management, that they would take away our privilege of riding if I kept up my attitude. So,
wow.
And I argued. I mean, some are almost hateful mail. Really got bitter. I mean, horses are emotional and cause emotions in folks, and so it got me to really thinking. And I would write long emails and reply back, that why I thought this. So anyway, it made an impression on me. Consequently, or subsequently, with that Forest Service issue, they rescinded that. Good handshake. It's been a great relationship there, and it's actually nationally known of how. And that's another topic of another show about the co-trails effort up there. But so went to brought that up with the folks up in Montana, and then so went through the meeting. We talked about it, and the meeting is over, and we were invited by Cindy and I were invited by one of the founders, Ken Osk, who I've known because he's a national director, or he's on the executive committee and comes to national meetings. He and his wife, Phyllis, invited us up to Columbia Falls, which is right near the gateway of the glacier and right near the Bob Marshall. And also that evening, of Sunday evening, Roland Cheek, who is the other founder who I had not met, there's two surviving founders still. Roland and his wife Alice came over, along with Deb Schatz. And Deb and Greg Schatz, Montana members forever, good folks. And we talked about rider privilege. And Roland Cheek is not something. He's a bit of a philosopher. He's an author of several books. I just looked up his site here. It's RolandCheek.com, ROLAND, Cheek, CHEEK.com.
Okay.
He's a storyteller. But so we started talking about it as a right or a privilege, and Roland came down with it. He thought it was a right. Ken, the other founder, said, "Well, it's both. It's a right and a privilege." It gets kind of complex. I think folks think that. I think most people agree that maybe getting a driver's license is a privilege. At least it's thought that way. But I think if you have insurance in a car and you're of age, it's almost a right that you have to get your license.
Right.
If you pass.
Right.
But so it's complex. I mean, the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, is a right, but there's also the great responsibility that you act carefully and respectfully, and that whole ethic of gun ownership. So we talked about it, and it's turned out that Roland Cheek, he's written a 2,800-page article. He's divided into two parts about that. When we went to see Roland, we all went over to Roland's place about a mile away from Ken's 2 days later. And Roland had On Liberty by Thomas Paine out. He was reviewing it.
Wow.
To delve into that. And one of the reasons we wanted to go see Roland and Alice before we went back home. But that happened. The founding of Backcountry Horsemen the idea came in the Bob Marshall Wilderness around the campfire, but the nuts and bolts of it came out, subsequently back down in the valley, in the Flathead Valley, and we kind of picked. That's where ground zero was between the four founders. The four and five founders was right this spot. It happened to be Roland's house on the map. So it was just kind of a ground zero, hollow ground, and so
right.
We sat there, and it's not resolved, but I think it comes. Roland's idea and Ken, the other founder, their ideas, I think, is that it is a right, but it carries great responsibility. And if you don't fulfill that responsibility, then you've lost your right. And so I think that's where we have it. And I think there's the other users, the off-road vehicles, the mountain bike and hiking folks, and everybody that they all have the responsibility to exercise that right. Otherwise, you lose it. And I think that's what Backcountry is pushing, and what those founders put together. And their idea was let's fulfill that responsibility. And therefore keep our right to ride.
Well, that's a great question. We want to give our callers, our listeners, an opportunity to call in if they'd like to, and express their opinions and thoughts, and maybe ask questions of you. And the number that they can call is 213-943-3396. 213-943-3396. And I think it's a topic that bears some. Who we have on the line?
Okay.
You're on Equestrian Legacy Radio, and who am I speaking with, and where are you from?
This is R.W. Hampton from Cimarron, New Mexico.
I should have recognized that number.
I'll tell you what, I was really interested when I found out who you were going to have on there, and I was interested in the discussion and been listening. And I wanted to offer my 2 cents. Most of the ranches I've worked on have been on private land, but I worked on one ranch that had some BLM country, and then another that had some Forest Service land. And I would say it's a right that should be treated like a privilege. And when you're riding on, and you've mainly been talking about wilderness areas, but my experience has been land where people are actively trying to make a living. And I think you need to treat it like a privilege, and close when you go to a gate, close them, and be mindful of. I had a friend one time that was looking after some cattle in some desert country on BLM, and some people had camped pretty close to the water, and the cattle wouldn't come. They were for whatever reason, they were too frightened to come up and drink. And
right.
So Oddly enough, he said he's deceased now, but he'd asked them to please move their camp, and they kind of blew him off, and he went back several times, and they had been pulling the cork on the bottle quite a bit. I think they were hunting, and they finally told him, "Kid, get out of here." And cattle, out in some of that country, it's a long ways to water, and that's where those cattle have been watering, and they were out there bawling, and so he snuck in there that night and pitched his rope over the tent, and he said, "I didn't know that they made tents with floors in them," and he rode off and heard the most god-awful sound there when that rope came tight, and I think there was about 4 or 5 people in there, but they were sure gone the next morning. But
oh, that's funny.
But anyhow, I think we should treat it like a privilege, because there are people out there that would rather us not be there, and some of them are administrative people, and some of them are maybe a little more radical environmentalist, and that's all we need to do is break too many of their rules, and then they'll fix it where we can't come back forever. So that's my 2 cents on the deal.
All right.
On RW's comments on the ranching on public lands, I'm good friends and really familiar with folks from the Guardians of the Range in Wyoming, which is cattle ranchers that use permits to be on Forest Service lands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they, I think, tourists that drive along and see cattle on Forest Service lands will say, well, what are they doing tearing everything up? But actually, look at the ecology and the results, they're really good stewards of the land. And plots of there's segregated plots where cattle are not allowed to test the vegetation with or without cattle, and it appears that the vegetation is much better off with the cattle. And I think they're extra careful stewards, the ranchers, because of that first blush idea that they're causing more damage, but really they do a great job out there taking care of the land, not discounting our gentleman with the BLM this past few weeks, but the rest of them do. So,
well, yeah, and
we have a government, and then pay the permit fees.
Right, and one of the greatest causes of some of our extreme fires is lack of fire, and but these cattle will actually go in and clean up some stuff, and make it a lot more. With these lightning strikes, where cattle have been, they're not as apt to explode into these horrific fires.
Oh, right, exactly.
Well, it's interesting. I saw a program on PBS the other day, and then I actually had this conversation in the last couple of days with someone about the fact that when they put a bounty on wolves, and they almost eliminated the wolves in some part of the country, I think around Yellowstone. It changed the entire ecology of that. And as soon as they decided to reintroduce the wolves, things came back. Rivers that had dried up, things that had changed. And sometimes too much interference by man is a problem. And our ranchers have been grazing cattle on these lands, and as you mentioned, our ranchers have been stewards of the land for generations now, and so we need to be responsible and exercise our rights at the same time. And so when government starts to interfere, I think, kind of like Jim said, send out some emails.
Right.
And let's see what we can do. But it's an interesting topic, and actually I thought we'd have more callers in today, but I'm sure glad you called, RW.
Well, I appreciate you letting me call. I've got to. Speaking of which, I got to get back out on our place, and they're letting some water down out of the mountains, and so we're filling some of our ponds up. But it's a great discussion, and thanks for letting me put my 2 cents in.
Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts, and I was almost positive you'd gone out that window after our segment on the show. So.
I decided to be like a man and just walk right past the women.
Okay. So. All right. Well, listen, thanks for calling in and sharing your thoughts with us. Appreciate that.
Thank you, fellas.
Thank you, Debbie.
All right. Bye. Okay. Well, Jim, we never know how many folks are going to call. We'll give the number out one more time. It's 213-943-3396 if you'd like to call in and tell us what you think about the fact of is riding on our public lands a right or a privilege. But, Jim, one of the things that I wanted to go back and talk with you about, when you got to visit with these two founding fathers of the Backcountry Horsemen of America, did you have a chance to talk about the way things have changed as far as everything? And, has the mission changed any?
The mission hasn't changed, and actually the problems haven't changed. It was kind of a funny thing. So we got to Ken and Phyllis's house, and right off the porch, just less than 2 miles of the foot at the bottom of the mountain that goes straight up to the snow-capped, and it's a great setting. And so they had Ken had a scrapbook, which is the local historian. He had happened to have it. They have 2 copies of the original newsletters, of original articles, and they were really pretty good go-getters in 1973, getting in the newspaper and spreading the word of the Forest Service and putting out a handbook. And so I flipped through the first pages. It could have been today. I mean, it could have been today. It was just the problems, access, the horses. The problems are the same. The complexity is probably more so because of new rules, the EPA and a lot of, and the National Environmental Policy Act is much more stringently imposed on every decision, but which is fine. But it was, I think that, in fact, I made a couple comments at our national board meeting about how that scrapbook could have been out of yesterday's work, and talking about Ken Osk is an executive committee, so he's on a phone call. He's one of 11 of us every month, and often through the month. So Ken is really on top continually of what we're doing, decisions we're making, and so Ken stays kind of quiet on the calls, but when he speaks, everybody listens. And so, and I think that from Ken's perspective, we're still sticking to the mission, and I think from Roland Cheeks too that we are. And with this, I think Roland and I are going to be communicating a bunch more just over the time here as things develop, and quite a likable fellow. And so I say we're staying to the mission. Matter of fact, I have to compliment the folks in Montana greatly. It's about 1,200 members, and they stay. Not that the other parts of the country don't either, but they stay sort of a moral compass or true to the story of what we're trying to do here, And so it was really reassuring going back that they've not changed very much. And so we have different issues. They have front country and back country, a lot of back country, but they do have front country. You need it to get to the back country. Whereas other states, it's mostly lots of front country, especially if you get further east and the southeast down here. But it's a united group, and I think we are staying to the mission. Matter of fact, every decision we make on the executive committee, and does this apply to our 5 purposes? Not all of them do. They sound good, but they don't apply.
Right.
And so so we pass on it, and maybe endorsing this or that. But I think our folks are more committed now. Well, I don't know, not more, but they are committed as much as 41 years ago.
Well, I suppose that probably that there is more awareness of the need by more people today than there was in the past, and then of course the methods of communicating have changed tremendously from what they were back then. Oh yeah, and that's an interesting point, because they their first monies that they were able to
gather up as a club, if you call it that, was they printed 5,000 copies of the Horseman's Handbook of how to be the good steward of the land as a horseman, because they'll admittedly prior to that, prior to the Wilderness Act of 1964, pack outfitters and what have you were not great stewards. I mean, maybe nobody was that great of a steward,
Right.
Fishing outfitters and everybody, hunters, just didn't. It was not a leave no trace ethic, and so and trails and trail usage, and I think when we started in '73, it became, well, we've got to do this right. If we want to we got to do this right to keep our right or privilege. And so
right.
The handbook is about this, and that was handed out to Forest Service offices all up in the mountain area, these 5,000 copies to give to horsemen to say, this is how you do it right. And still in some printings. And so that's, it's still the issues, it's still the commitment after all these years.
Well, and they say is the more things change, the more they stay the same, and so that's probably true in this as much as anything else. I wanted to ask you, and I guess it's because I'm a Southeasterner as well, but what did you fellas think about Chickamauga when they were down there? We're kind of changing the subject a little bit.
I sent a thank you email to the Park Service chief ranger and supervisory rangers who helped us with this throughout the, getting everything in order. Some of the quotes were, "It was awesome. It's incredible. This ought to be on every horse rider's bucket list." So, and I say these are the folks that ride out west in the Great Vistas, and
right.
So the way we organized it was something the Park Service said had never been done. Was we 3 volunteer historians who are they do not guide rides or anything. One's an architect, one's a chief financial officer of an iCloud company, and one's a professor at college instructor. And but they did this because they're history nuts and about the Civil War. And so we took we practiced it to get the timing right, and then that we all sequence everybody around. And so we did the practice rides, and we had earbuds. So they had a microphone for the guide, the historian, and then the riders would have earbuds, which made a dramatic, as my wife Cindy's idea, a dramatic change, because if you've been in all of our listeners here have been riding in horse groups, and
right.
to say something, you got to wait till everybody gathers up, and then you start out again, and horses are dancing around and all that business. So,
right.
So in this case, say you're riding up to a monument or exceptionally mentionable place, the historian was able to talk about it as he rode up to it. So you might stop or you might not, and then
right.
ride on again. And so it was the amount of information per running foot was really enormous. And I think a lot of folks, the Civil War, more down here, we're attuned to it because there's markers and things all around. But
right.
from out west, other parts of the country, Northeast, the Midwest, I mean, it's something maybe in high school or college, and was which side was this general on, and it's really kind of a, something way in history, but. It's really brought alive, like there's Carnes Monument, and at this monument, Carnes was 22 years old, and he went to the Naval Academy back before the Civil War to be a seaman. But when the war started, he joined, and since you have to know your artillery and your triangulation, he was head of an artillery group with about 80 horses and 60 men. 4 cannons, the caissons that carry the ammunition, and what happened, they got into a fight right in the middle, and the cannons are exactly where they were, and a shell came in and hit one of the ammunition wagons, the caissons, and exploded.
Oh, wow.
All the horses, all the 2 men, and so you're there, and you just talk about hollowed ground, just,
right.
And just at this one spot, and so 124,000 men, 35,000 casualties, bloodiest 2 days of the American Civil War, and 65,000 horses.
Wow.
I mean, it's enormous numbers, staggering numbers, and it's right down the road from us. And so anybody, and it's a good place for riders, for your listeners, if we're down here in the Southeast, to take Cousin Earl, who's never been on a horse, to give him a ride, because it's 75% really flat, and if you come off, it's really soft. Other than one portion in the northwest corner that gets a little more hilly and stuff, but at 1,400 monuments, the soldiers were alive when they designed that park. It was the 4th national park. It's hard to believe.
Wow.
It was Yellowstone, Yosemite, and Sequoia, and the 4th one was Chickamauga.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, so it's a special place, and so if any of your riders get the chance to come down there, there's a trailhead. We used a place called Trails End at the south end of the park where you can stable your horses in that. It's Trails End Ranch is south of the park, right on the border of the park. You just ride in from the side, and then the national park has its own trailhead. There's a movie, great museum, great rifle collection, one of the world-class rifle collections are in the museum. So there's a lot there. And the Park Service is just great with us, working with us. So.
Well, I think that one thing that shows is that we have great places to ride all across this country, and to be able to maintain the right and the privilege to ride on those lands, we need to act responsibly and enjoy the beauty and the gifts that have been given to us, and get out and enjoy these trails and become involved with an organization like Backcountry Horsemen of America, who work so hard to keep these trails clear and to keep access available to all of us who enjoy getting out and riding those things. So want to mention one more time the fundraising campaign that Backcountry Horsemen of America has in progress right now. And I guess, Jim, to go to the website, backcountryhorse.com, and can
click
find
on
more information.
the fundraising picture there, and you get a good thank you incentive prize back also. So,
all right. Well, I
just go to our website and learn about us. So. Yeah.
Well, we want to encourage people to do that, become active and involved, and get involved with some of the chapters of Backcountry Horsemen of America that are doing so much to help the trails, and I know that the Parks and Forest Service folks appreciate any help that they get when folks are working together. So, Jim, any final thoughts you want to share with us? Well,
just on that last thought, we did get an award presented to us by the Forest Service. Joe Meade, the Director of Recreation and Heritage and Volunteers, the Chief Forester of the United States, prepared a plaque for him to give to us at Chattanooga, and we appreciate that very much, that recognition. And thank you, Gary, for having us on, and having us on every month. We really look forward to it and sharing what's going on in the backcountry. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate that, and of course, you can remind your folks too, Jim, if they missed the live show, they can always go back and listen to the archive podcast 24/7 on demand, and you can go back and listen to any of the previous shows that we've done with Backcountry Horsemen. So enjoy having you on there. It's important to keep people informed and engaged and involved in our trails and our treasures that we have. We've got to leave a heritage and a legacy for our children if we want them to be able to enjoy those same things that we enjoy. So, Jim, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Talk with you soon. Bye-bye. All right, we've had a great show today with R.W. Hampton.